Welcome back. More than 90% of Singapore's food is imported from over 180 countries and regions. Let's take a look at where some of it comes from. In 2025, pork was the food type which had the highest number of approved countries, 36. This is closely followed by poultry from 33 approved countries. Processed eggs is third at 29. Now, one of the strongest El Nino weather patterns on record is widely expected to develop in the second half of this year. The droughts and bushfires around the region is threatening to disrupt food supplies. Hot weather and lower than normal rain levels are hurting crops as farmers delay planting. This could impact Thailand's rice fields, Indonesia's palm oil plantations, India's grain-producing plains, and Australia's eastern wheat belt. El Nino-driven dryness is another big blow for farmers already grappling with fertilizer and diesel shortages caused by the war on Iran. Now, Singapore has been diversifying import sources to minimize the impact of supply disruptions. Last year, the new added sources include Lithuania for shell and processed eggs and poultry. Paraguay was also added for processed eggs, poultry, pork, and beef. And Greece was also approved for poultry, pork, and beef. Now, to delve deeper into this discussion, we have Prof William Chen, who is Director for Food Science and Technology Program at NTU Singapore. Prof, welcome to the show. Now, let's start off with this. Singapore imports food from different sources, as we've seen earlier. Now, in a global shock, how does that protect us from shortages or even higher prices?
Well, if we look at geographically speaking, we import food from more than 180 countries, and all these countries will not be affected to the same extent by whatever shock we may be facing, so that this provides us with a very good buffer to import food efficiently from countries which are less affected by any shock.
We've mentioned some countries earlier, but are there any key food-producing countries or regions that you are closely watching right now that could be very important partners going forward for Singapore?
Well, if we look at the food category that we are importing in, I would categorize probably carbohydrate, for example, staples, and protein, like animal meat, all these. I would pay special attention to staple-producing countries, for example, rice-producing countries. And these countries, they are also exporting to Singapore, and they are also affected by what you just described, like El Nino and this Middle East crisis. And so, of course, the impact is different for both these shocks, but we can see that there's a multiplier effect from the Middle East crisis. So it's not just about fertilizer. We also talk about the energy, impact of the energy shortage, because energy affects everything in the food supply chain, from producing, farm production, because irrigation needs energy, and then transportation needs energy, and then shipping needs energy, and then processing. So all the food supply chain will be to a certain extent affected by energy shortage. So this is something we should be looking at. And the secondly, when we talk about animal livestock products that would be exported to Singapore, we also need to bear in mind that the animal feeds, they come from these crops, right? So if we have a fertilizer crisis, energy shortage, ultimately you affect the crop yield, and then ultimately affect animal feed, and then it's like a vicious cycle. So ultimately, all the food produced may be affected to a certain extent.
And this also brings us to the limitations then of diversification as a strategy, because what if multiple countries that we depend on as well get hit together by the same pressures? Then what happens? We become more vulnerable in that sense.
Well, to a certain extent, yes, but our government has this vision that to enhance our national food security, we do not just rely on private sector to take care of the food import. For example, our government has signed a number of memorandum of cooperation. So it's a government-to-government agreement to ensure stable food supply even in crisis situation. So recently we have signed such agreement with Cambodia, Vietnam on rice import, and with New Zealand on a broader range of food import.
Yeah, so that provides some safety there. But also, if we were to think about, the supply chain itself, when the world is hit with these pressures, both El Nino and also the Middle East crisis, who typically feels the pressure first in the supply chain? Where would you say will be hit the hardest?
Well, if we talk about food supply chain within Singapore, we first talk about importers, and then the retailers, and then the supermarket, and the hawkers, and the consumers. I would say everyone will feel the pressure of the higher price, but ultimately the receiving end is actually consumers. So I would say that everyone is affected, but there's always this value chain that we can pass on the higher cost to the next level, and then so on. So consumer ultimately bear the brunt of this price increase.
At some point, the consumer has to bear the cost.
Yes.
Well, looking ahead then in the next few months, for example, what are some signs you would say that the food prices are likely to rise further? What can we look out for?
Well, we need to take this food prices discussion into a perspective. So what I mean by that is that if we compare with Ukraine war back in 2022, at that time the global harvest was poor and the stockpile were also low, and therefore the food prices immediately react to the Ukraine war, and we can see the hike in the food prices. But this Middle East crisis this year, it so happened that the harvest was fantastic, excellent everywhere in the world, and the stockpile were high, and so that we can see that the food prices did not or are not reacting so strongly towards this crisis. But nevertheless, so I would say in the next 2-3 months, we probably do not see a very sharp increase in food prices. But as the fertilizer and energy crisis seep into this food system, we'll probably see the effect on the next plantation, and increase in the transportation costs, and eventually, in maybe next year, after 6 or 9 months, we probably will see some effect.
So the impact will take some time to play out as well. Well, Professor, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. I've been chatting with Professor William Chen from Food Science and Technology Program at NTU Singapore.